Hi, good evening. Thank you for coming. My name is Tina Langton. I am the president of the League of Women Voters of Red Wing, and I'm so glad to see the active participation of our community. Thank you very much. I'd like to welcome you to the Red Wing League of Women Voters Meet Your 2020 Candidates. We'd like to give a special thanks to the candidates for being here and to our co-sponsors, Perry Island Indian Community, and the Red Wing Chamber of Commerce for helping us bring you this event. Before we hear from the candidates, we have some general information and guidelines to share with you. The League of Women Voters is a nonprofit organization focused on grassroots voter education. We encourage active and informed participation in government and do not endorse candidates for office or political parties. The opinions expressed tonight are of those of the candidates and not those of the League of Women Voters. If you're interested in learning more about the League, please stop by our information table. Due to COVID-19 and to comply with the governor's orders, we request that all audience members please wear a mask and maintain a social distance of at least 6 feet between yourself and others. If needed, please sanitize your hands at the greeters table. There, we've got them over there as well. We do have a small number of masks available as well. In the event of a weather emergency, we will head to the basement of the Red Wing Public Library, right behind us on the corner. The forum this evening is being recorded by LWV for later broadcast. Recordings of this event may not be used without the express written approval of the League. The League will only allow audio-video of this event to be broadcast in its entirety, except by the media reporting on the event. The recording of this event will be made available on local cable channels, Facebook, vote411.org. Vote411.org is the League of Women Voters website where you can find local race information, candidate statements, and see who will be on your ballot. We hope the recording will be available on vote411.org within 2 weeks. Remember, early voting starts 1 week from tomorrow, September 18th. If you haven't registered to vote or requested an absentee ballot and would like to do so, please stop by the registration table right over there in blue, and then the ladies over with the Vote Here sign can help you register as well. At this time, I'd like to introduce our moderator for this evening's forums, Jerry Olson. Jerry is a business advisor and coach, as well as a human resource consultant working with small business owners and their leadership teams. Jerry has been involved in community leadership in various community and nonprofit organizations. Jerry, thank you for moderating this event.
Thank you, Tina. Welcome, everybody. Due to safety concerns, we will not accept audience questions tonight while the candidates are on stage. Questions for the candidates were collected online anonymously and reviewed by an experienced League of Women Voters team. You are welcome to approach the candidates during the meet and greet afterwards in the park here if you have additional questions. Please remember to maintain social distance while speaking with the candidates. As we start the forum, each candidate will have 90 seconds to make an opening statement and 60 seconds to respond to each question. The candidates will also have a minute at the close to make a closing statement. And after the closing statement, there will be a 10-minute break while we reset the stage for the County Commissioner Forum. Please join me in welcoming Minnesota 21A House candidates, Matt Bruns, Barb Haley, Minnesota Senate 21 candidates, Mike Goggin and Ralph Kaler. I ask that you would please hold your applause during the forum, and we will certainly welcome applause after the closing statements. But in order to give each candidate their full amount of time, please refrain from applauding during the forum. We'll begin with an opening statements with candidate Bruns, and then we will follow a randomized pre-selected sequence. So Matt will start, Barb Haley will go, Ralph Kaler, and then Mike will finish the opening statement. So, Mr. Bruns.
Well, what a pleasure it is to look out on a crowd like this. When I signed up for doing this last fall, I thought there would be a lot of events like this. So to be in a forum of this variety really fills my heart. It feels like the true campaign season we were all looking for. But if we haven't met before, my name is Matt Bruns. I'm a special education teacher. I work at an ALC for high school age youth. I'm inspired to run because I work directly with the students and families of Minnesota and see how we can direct policy change to lift them up and give our communities a solid bedrock from which to sprout and succeed for the next 150 years. If you think about education and our disparities there, and look at 1992 dollars, we're funding our schools at a rate something like $2,300 less per pupil now than we did in 1992. But that's not the only crisis we're up against. We need to do some serious work in healthcare, protect our environment, major spends in rural broadband, and we need to protect our small family farmers and protect their profit margins because they're slim, and a lot of the benefits we seem to be forking out are going to our larger corporate partners. We need to make sure we level that playing field. So again, thank you everyone for coming out. It's a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to a solid dialogue. Thank you.
Barb Haley.
Thanks, Jerry. Good evening, everybody. Thank you to the Chamber and the League of Women Voters and the Prairie Island community for sponsoring tonight and for all of you for coming out. We sure got lucky to have a sunny fall day and not yesterday, the day before's weather. I am Barb Haley and I am your state representative. I have served for the past 2 terms, the past 4 years as your representative in St. Paul, and it's been an honor and a privilege to do so. I was born and raised here in Red Wing, and I'm your voice in St. Paul because I want to make sure that Red Wing stays the community that we want to live in, work in, and raise our families in. When I ran, I called out some initial priorities, and I've really stuck with those priorities for the past 2 terms because that's what you have told me is important. Quality health care that's affordable close to home, strong schools that prepare our kids from early pre-K all the way through high school and prepare them for a competitive workforce afterwards. And protecting, as I said, our economy, whether it's our farms or our small businesses that keep our small communities strong. We face a lot of challenges in St. Paul, not only the COVID-19 crisis, but a staggering budget deficit, and I look forward to working on those things in the upcoming session. Thanks for being here, and I look forward to your questions this evening.
Thank you. Ralph Taylor. Yes.
I got you. Well, thank you everyone for giving up of your evening to come listen to this, and to the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this event. You know, I think I bring an option to have a fresh voice and someone that's positive about our government. My name's Ralph Kaler. I come with a different pedigree than most of the people who run for office. I'm a 4th generation owner-operator of a farm. I'm a worker. I'm a solar developer and a business owner. I've got 1 foot in the history of Minnesota with the operation of our family farm. We're in the middle of transitioning it to our son and a grandson, bringing generations 5 and 6. I understand what it's like to have a rural, small business that's in agriculture and transition into a multi-generation business and transfer out of it. That's an important part when we're making decisions at St. Paul. My other foot's in the future of Minnesota as an owner of one of the fastest growing solar developers in the state. We've developed over 100 megawatts of solar. That's the equivalent of planting 30 million trees. We've created over 100 high-paying jobs and brought over $200 million of economic development to our rural communities. I don't talk about what I'm going to do. We get things done. Wouldn't that be nice if our legislature worked that same way? I have a different experience when it comes to health care. My wife, who's here, is an 8-year survivor of cancer. She is fine. We are a major medical expense surviving family. I also have provided health care benefits for our employees. Both of that experience is important when we make decisions at St. Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. Mike Goggins.
Well, thank you very much for being here tonight, everyone. I want to thank the League of Women Voters, the Prairie Island Indian community, and the Chamber of Commerce. The last 4 years, I've been so proud and honored to be your state senator representing the fine community of Red Wing at the Capitol. One thing my family is known for around here is public service, giving back to the communities. I grew up 3 blocks from here. And I'll tell you what, it's just an amazing town to be in. It's an amazing city to be from. And we do a lot of wonderful things because we take care of each other. And that's what I do at the Capitol. First thing I wanted to do was do everything I could to help our seniors out and those folks that are on fixed income by going after the Social Security income tax. So far, I've gotten 2 cuts at it. I'm going to keep after it until we get that gone. We need to help those that need the money the most to be able to pay their taxes, do their things in the community, and spend time with their families and enjoy what Minnesota has to offer. So that's my agenda, is to make sure that I do everything I can to help everybody have the highest quality of life, to live, work, raise a family, and retire here in Minnesota. Breaks my heart when I hear people tell me we're moving out of state because we can't afford to live here anymore. So I want to do everything I can to help those folks stay here with their families, their communities, and their church. Thank you. I look forward to tonight's discussion.
Thank you. The first question will be directed first to Ralph. You'll all be asked to answer the question, and please ask me to restate the question. I won't restate it unless you ask, but Ralph, Mike, Barb, and Matt will be the order. So the first question: what do you see are the most pressing issues facing us in Minnesota, and what will you do about these in the 2021 legislative session?
Well, I think we've got multiple issues we need to deal with. Short term, we need to bring our communities back together. We need to work on supporting our law enforcement and creating social equity. It's not an either-or situation. We can't have this division that's going on. The second thing we need to work on, we need to get a functional government again. We can't continue to allow our elected officials to kick the can down the road and just point fingers at the other side. We need to expect our elected officials to work like we do. If you can't get your job done, you don't get to keep it. I think that's kind of a simple ask of all of them. The third thing is we need to work on having a bright future for the next generation. When I graduated from college, I wasn't worried about the world. I was worried about creating a career, building myself. The young people today are scared about the future. We need to work towards changing that, and we need to start now, not wait till 2040 or 2030, 50 to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike?
First off, we've got a budget deficit of about $3 to $4 billion staring us in the face this next session. There's going to be a lot of draw on our funds and the resources that we have at the state, and that's going to put a lot of burden on the taxpayers. So we have to do the right thing, and we have to make sure that we're spending the money wisely. Yeah, we don't need to kick the can down the road. We need to make sure that we are doing everything we can right here, right now. Civil unrest, it's got to stop. We've got to start looking out for each other. We've got to start being civil to each other, and we have to work together. And that's what I do at the Capitol the last 4 years. I have numerous bills that have been bipartisan in nature. Many of them have been in the agricultural industry, because that's the area that with this COVID-19, we have to make sure that we have a strong ag economy and that folks are getting the food that they need to be able to live their lives.
Thank you. Barb?
Well, I have 3 priorities going into next session. First of all, we've got to continue to work on our economic rebound from this pandemic. We need to support our farmers and our small businesses and all of our employees across the state. We currently have almost 230,000 Minnesotans out of work. We went from a 3% unemployment rate to over 9%. We're starting to see the comeback right now, but we've got a lot of work ahead of us. So one of my priorities is to get people back to work, keep them at work, and make sure the economy rebounds. Second priority is addressing the budget deficit. As Senator Goggins said, and I was on a call yesterday with MMB, the deficit numbers are now up to almost $5 billion. When you look at our biennial state budget of $48 billion, that's a 10% budget deficit that we face. It's doable, but it's going to require very difficult choices, especially when you look at the fact that education and health and human services are the 2 biggest sectors of our general fund budget. So it's going to require people that are experienced in St. Paul, have worked in both of those areas, which I have, and know how to protect the right things in Minnesota and eliminate fraud and waste and abuse. My third priority, I think I have a red card, so I'll talk about my third priority later.
Thank you. Matt?
I think immediately as as we come out of the pandemic, we need economic recovery. And a lot of people are going to tout that we need to cut, and tighten our belts. But if we look at economic depressions that have occurred over the last 150 years, as governments look to austerity measures, it actually prolongs those economic downfalls by about a decade. So we need a robust bonding bill, and that needs to get passed through the House, and it needs to get done. But once we secure our feet again, we need to make sure we protect our environment, because if this farming community changes in any way, we're looking at whether that will not sustain the profits that we need in our area, especially for our family farms. But we need to make sure everyone has access to a quality education, the infrastructure we need to make sure families and businesses can be here, like rural broadband. And there are just so many things that we need to set in place to make sure our communities exist for as long as they've already been here and people can thrive.
Thank you. We'll move on to question number 2. And we'll start with Barb, and it'll be Matt, Mike, and Ralph. And question number 2 is, COVID-19 is having a broad impact on our economy, our social and financial lives. What do you propose to get us to the other side of this?
Thank you, Jerry. Yes, this is an unprecedented situation, not only for Minnesota, but for the country and the entire world. As I previously said, we have 230,000 Minnesotans out of work. So the best social welfare program we have is getting people back to work. I serve in the Jobs and Economic Development community, so I know the levers we can pull there and the investments we can make in helping people retool with skills, connect to our career force centers, incent employers to hire people back. So those are some of the things we can do right away to encourage the economic rebound. In addition, we have to continue to support our healthcare system. We've done a phenomenal job of making sure that our hospitals were ready. Fortunately, we haven't seen any of the numbers that were originally predicted, but we need to continue to make sure that we have quality staff and PPE and all of the necessary medical equipment to deal with this pandemic that we are currently managing and we are living with. Although it's a staggering situation, I'm confident that Minnesota can come through this. We've got strong leadership in the House and the Senate, and we'll be able to forge ahead. And so I want to make sure people feel confident going forward and that we will get to the other side of this.
Thank you. Matt?
Yeah, our recovery from this pandemic is twofold. It's economic and health. So when we talk about the economics of this situation, it's getting a bonding bill passed and lifting those boats of the working class so they can then disperse the money they're earning in family supporting jobs into our local communities so they can have the revenues they're used to and expand our tax base in that sense. On the other side is health. And we need to continue to follow the science and the studies and journals that support and promote those strategies that mitigate the spread of the virus, and take a really hard look at our for-profit healthcare system, a system that until 1973 was illegal. We need to take a look at that and make sure people have the equity and resources they need to be healthy, because no Minnesotan should be punished for something they didn't ask for. And those are the things that really need to happen to combat this virus. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike?
Well, as you can see, we all have our masks on. We go to our local businesses. We got masks on in there. They're using cleaners and cleansers, sanitizers. They've got shields up in a lot of cases. Our manufacturers are putting in COVID-19 safety measures as well, like Red Wing Shoe, Rydell, the St. James Hotel, for example. So we know what we need to do. We need to wear the masks. We need to be 6 foot or better. I like to call it physical distancing because we're actually social people. One of the things that people are having problems with is not being able to interact. And so we need to be able to do that, and to be able to continue going forward. We do need to have broadband expansion because so many people are working from home and kids are learning at home. So we need to build that infrastructure and make sure that we can get those folks back to work. I've got the Helmets to Hard Hat bill to help our returning vets from deployment get into the skilled trades, build up a career, and get out there and help build the roads and bridges and buildings that we need to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Ralph?
You know, the important thing with COVID right now is we do need to get our economy open, but we need to protect the health of the workers as they move forward. It would have been really nice if all of our state leaders had supported wearing masks when this started. It would help our economy being open now. Instead, we now got people looking and doing armchair quarterbacking. If the Republican Party had supported wearing masks, social distancing early, we would be in better shape right now. Our leaders failed us. The second thing we need to do is get a bonding bill passed. 4 separate sessions on that, we don't have that done. That will get a lot of people to work for a long period of time. We need to start holding our elected leaders accountable to get things done in the past and not do the kick the can down the road and listen to more promises. I think that's pretty simple basics. It's the way we have to run our business, the way we have to run our farm. We need to approach government in the same way and expect that out of our leaders who have been there. Sending them back to expect a different result than what we've had in the past is insanity. Nothing's going to change if we have the same people in St. Paul.
Thank you. Question number 3, we'll start with Mike, then Ralph, Matt, and Barb. That is your rebuttal card. We do allow 1 rebuttal. 30 seconds.
As your sitting state representative, I just wanted to clarify what the other candidate said about a bonding bill. We're back in session tomorrow. There will not be a bonding bill passed tomorrow, and it's not because we're not doing our jobs. It wasn't passed last month either because the state refinanced their bonding debt, and in that refinancing process, we're in what's called in the financial world a quiet period. That means we cannot alter the state budget. We can't incur any additional debt until that refinancing is complete and that quiet period is over. So that is not us not doing our job. That's some financial things that are occurring. That's coming directly from the governor. So I just want to set the stage. You won't see a bonding bill passed tomorrow. It'll hopefully happen in October.
Thank you. We'll move on to question number 3. Mike, Ralph, Matt, and Barb will be the order. So the question is, do you believe there is systemic racism in our state? If so, how would you address it if you are elected?
Well, as far as systemic racism is concerned, a lot of people want to make it racism. I personally wasn't raised that way. I was raised to love and care for each other and be courteous and respectful. We had families of color here in town growing up, and I couldn't tell you if they were colored or not. We just had fun playing with the kids, and the families were great. But as far as systemic racism, you bet. We got to go after that. We have to work on policies that encourage people to want to be nice to other people. But you can't change people's internal thinking in that without getting them to understand that we're all people and we have to work together. But we can't legislate people to be nice to each other.
Thank you. Ralph? The question is, do you believe there is systemic racism in our state? If so, how would you address it if elected?
Well, I think anyone that denies that there is really not paying attention to the facts and looking at the events that are occurring. You know, as a white rural person, my relationship with our law enforcement is they're the guys that help me get out of the ditch when we shouldn't be driving in the winter. They're the people we see on the street. However, for the young Haitian man that's living with my brother and sister-in-law, he's been stopped over 20 times since January, driving between Eyoda and Rochester. He thinks there's a problem. We need to address it. Our perceptions are based on our experiences. My experiences have been good. The minorities and the people of color, their experiences haven't been so positive. We need to address it. We need to work with it. That includes working with all groups, and we need to start having people bringing all the different communities together rather than driving a wedge in it and promoting fear and division.
Thank you. Matt?
There is absolutely systemic racism prevalent in our state, and I'm just trying to think of all the different areas it seems to permeate through, whether it's our healthcare system and the outcomes for people of color, whether that's education and the outcomes for people of color, our housing and zoning restrictions, and where we decide to put polluting power generating plants. All of these things are tied to systemic racism because we thought it was okay. We need to explicitly target the things that are happening and change these laws and rectify a situation. We, and I can say we because I'm a 32-year-old white man, I understand my privilege. I've not had to second guess who I am, whether that's my gender or my racial identity when I'm in for a job interview or anything else. We have a lot of work to do, and we target it explicitly, and we get the job done. We need to look out for our neighbors because we will be changing. There will be a lot more people of color in our communities, especially if we plan to exist for as long as we've already been here.
Thank you. Barb?
You know, America is a nation of immigrants. My immigrant family is from Germany. My kids are adopted from Colombia. I've always believed that one of the great foundations of America is our acceptance for different races and different religions and different ways of living. My experience with addressing racism at the Capitol, I've served on the Education Committee, I serve on the Health and Human Services Committee. When I make decisions, I always look for the facts and the data. And the facts do tell us that we have the largest achievement gap in the country for kids of color. It's staggering because we've all believed Minnesota has such a fantastic education system, and we do, but we are failing some of those kids. We also have some of the largest maternal fetal outcomes, poor outcomes for people of color. On the Health and Human Services Committee, I was shocked to see those numbers and talk with my colleagues and talk with the providers about why that's happening and how we can change it. We also have significant disparities in housing, and people of color have less opportunity for home ownership than white people. So when I'm in St. Paul, I look at the facts and the data and work on policies that can change those things. The biggest thing we can do to change people's outcomes and life trajectory is education, a job, and quality health care. And I will continue to work on all those things for people of all colors, all religions, and all races.
Thank you. Question number 4, we will start with Matt, and then Barb, Mike, and then Ralph. Question number 4, Southeast Minnesota has some of the highest healthcare costs in Minnesota. How will you address these costs for your constituents?
I should make this abundantly clear. On the federal level and even at the state level, I support a single-payer healthcare system. And if you can look at a lot of peer-reviewed studies, but one of the best ones takes the United States, lumps us in a pile with our 37 peer nations, and we pay 3 times as much for the healthcare that we receive than other countries do. So paying into this system doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be paying more. It also doesn't mean the quality of your care is going to go down, because they beat us in every single metric, whether that's mortality rates of mothers during pregnancy, access to care as far as wait times go. They only lose to us in our cancer care. We don't need to sacrifice that if we adopt that system. That system is in place, it's ready to go, it's the Minnesota Health Plan, and before that we can put MNsure as a choice in the open market for people to buy into. But the solutions are there. We just need to work on them and not see them as so new and so progressive. These are things that people deserve because healthcare is a human right, especially here in our community.
Thank you. Mike?
As far as healthcare is concerned, last session I had the bill to make it so that when the Affordable Care Act says you have to have 8 congressional seats in the state of Minnesota plus 1, so you have 9 regions in the state. Our region is the most expensive in the country. The reason being is because we have the Mayo Clinic. So with that, what happens is all costs of all healthcare providers in that region are used to calculate the premiums going for the next year. So what I did is I have a bill to go through that says you have to only incorporate residents of the region, because we get people from all over the world with the most expensive healthcare coming to Mayo Clinic to get their healthcare. With that, that will lower the cost for our people in southern Minnesota. The other thing is we have to get into direct primary care, where you go to your doctor directly, you keep the insurance company out of it, and you get your primary well care right directly from your doctor.
Thank you. Ralph?
Part of the problem is we need to address the situation and fix it now. We had a great economy and nothing changed in the last couple of years. It was continued to get kicked down the road. Some things we can do short term. The first one is to expand eligibility for MNcare. Let more people be eligible for it. Take the pressure off of them. Way too many families in our state are one major medical expense away from homelessness or bankruptcy. It adds a lot of stress to daily life. As an employer, we do not enjoy having to work through and figure out what is covered in our health care, looking at plans. We can get that. If that could be offset, let's have a public option. We're happy to do that and let someone else handle that and then have minimum essential requirements so people know what they have for their insurance instead of guessing about it or finding out after you have an incident that your coverage is not there or that the event is not covered. We need to get more direct care and get the middlemen out of our health care.
Thank you. We'll move on to question number 5, and we'll start with Ralph, then we'll go to Mike, then Matt and Barb. So the question. Oh, I apologize. I'm not keeping track here. Barb,
Okay.
please answer the question about healthcare costs in Minnesota.
Thank you, Jared. I serve on the Health and Human Services Committee, and it's one of the things that I work on most frequently in St. Paul. This is a very, very complex area of our state government and our federal government as well. There's a number of things that I've worked on, but going forward, I would prioritize increasing competition, increasing access, and what's called the right to shop, so that as a consumer, you can shop outside of your network for lower cost of care. Lowering the cost of prescription drugs. We worked on that last session. We introduced drug price transparency, and we'll be monitoring drug price increases so that we can do more to contain it at the state level. And also, when other candidates talk about MinCare, 20 to 25% of people in Minnesota are on public pay medical care. How does that get paid for? That gets paid for by everybody else that's on the private pay system. So it's easy to say, put everybody on Minnesota Care. Where's the money going to come from to do that? So it's not an easy solution to just throw out there. We've looked at it, and it won't happen that easily. The last thing we need to do is talk about health. Helping people be healthier will lower the cost of care, and most of the cost of care is with chronic disease, obesity, diabetes, heart disease. So we focus on health, and that will help us lower the cost of care as well.
Again, my apologies, Barb. Moving on to question number 5. The order will be, and you guys will keep me honest on this, Ralph, Mike, Matt, and Barb. So the question is, what in your opinion is the biggest obstacle to passing legislation and budgets at the state capitol, and how will you deal with these obstacles?
You know, I think the biggest obstacle right now to getting the budget passed is we've got two parties that want to make the other side fail. Rather than working towards a common endpoint, they're way too worried about who gets the blame and how they can take credit. We've got a dysfunctional system. We hear elected officials always talk about going to. We never hear them say, this is what we did. Here's what we accomplished. You know, in our cattle herd, we call on two things. We call on performance and attitude. I think we need to start doing that with some of our elected officials. If you don't perform and get your work done, you don't get to stay. If you take the herd in the wrong direction, you come with a bad attitude, instead of keeping them around, you don't get to stay. It's kind of simple work with that, but our budget, we need to have both sides working to get it done, rather than worrying about how they can take credit and shift the blame and the responsibility and the accountability for lack of action.
Thank you. Mike?
Well, I'm not worried about lack of action. I'm not worried about that, because when you're up at the Capitol, like anywhere, like my job as a project manager at the power plant, I have to work with a diverse group of people. We have differing opinions, we have different ways of getting to the same result, and you have to be able to listen to people. You have to be able to sit down with them and say, okay, I understand you're coming from this direction, I'm coming from this direction. You have to work together. I've done that time and time again at the Capitol on numerous bills that I've gotten passed. And that's what I'm going to continue to do, because that's what I do best. I'm an engineer. I listen, I get the facts, and then I work to solve the problem and I implement the solution.
Thank you. Matt?
There is no doubt a slew of issues at our state legislature. We heard talk about a bonding bill and how it can't happen now, but it's a hostage from 6 months ago when Kurt Daudt refused to act on that. And what I like about the electoral system is that this is a job interview. And for us on this side, every 2 years, that side every 4 years. You decide if the job's been good enough, and then decide if we get to go back. And for me, I've always believed government is the agency of the people. We are the one actor you have working on your behalf. And if I get elected, I'm not running to represent 51% of people. It's 100% of the people in the district that you're up there representing. And the policies up there should be those that represent the people and benefit them for years to come. We cannot be actors up there playing into the pockets of big corporations. We need to protect our people and make sure they have what they need so they can thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. Barb?
Well, I've passed 2 budgets. We pass a budget in St. Paul every 2 years. We have a biennial budget, a 2-year budget. So I have done that work. And to get a budget passed in the state of Minnesota, it requires the House, the Senate, and the governor. So all of us have to work together to do that. And Minnesota has to pass a balanced budget every year. We cannot deficit spend, which is a good thing. So you're having to manage differing priorities. And as I said earlier, most of our budget is healthcare and education. And Minnesota has a strong tradition of supporting education and healthcare. That covers almost 85% of our budget, so 17% is left for everything else we want to fund. So it is a challenging process, and that's a good thing. Debate is a good thing, because that helps us get to hopefully what is the best for all Minnesotans in the end. I have a reputation in St. Paul as being someone who builds relationships through trust and hard work. I also have a relationship in the House as one of the legislators that has worked on more bipartisan legislation than most of my colleagues. That's how we get things done, and I will continue to work that way next year in St. Paul.
Thank you. Everybody got to answer that question? Okay, just good, checking. Question number 6. Farmers, and by the way, we'll ask Barb to answer this first, Matt, and then Ralph and Mike. Farmers are underrepresented in the Minnesota State Legislature. Explain how you'll provide an equitable voice for farmers of this district.
Thank you, Jerry. I guess I'd have to look at those statistics on where that question comes from with farmers being underrepresented. In the House, we have a number of legislators that come from the farm community. So I guess I question maybe the premise there. I think agriculture is a big part of our economy, and so we talk about agricultural issues frequently in the House. And in the 4 years that I've been there, I can just list through all the things that we've accomplished. We've increased milk loads for farmers. We've provided more mental health funding. We've put funding into what's called the RFA, which is the Rural Finance Authority, so money to help farmers get started with loans. We've supported transition to new farmers. We've supported aid when our farms were damaged by storms last year. We had aid this year for the coronavirus for farmers. So there's dozens of things each session that address the ag economy, and I think it's well represented from my experience in St. Paul.
Thank you. Matt?
Yeah, I can't speak for myself, but I know you have a chance to elect a farmer. He's standing up here. But for me, it goes back to representing 100% of your community. My phone is open, my email is ready to go, knock on the door, take those appointments and actually listen. I am an IEP case manager. I sat in 6 meetings yesterday, and every single one of those meetings is focused on relationships. You're having conversations, you're filling each other's buckets, you're understanding what's important, and then merging that anecdotal evidence, like here's what I'm seeing, here's what I'm feeling, with here's the data, and working alongside your farmers and letting them know that you are their vessel. You work with each other, and I represent you here. Keeping that door open and that conversation going allows me to be an advocate for those farmers, and I can work on their behalf in a very strong manner.
Thank you. Ralph?
You know, I think most people are unaware. In the Minnesota Senate, there currently are no active farmers. There are no active farmers in the DFL caucus. There are 6 active farmers on the Republican side in the House. I think that's a surprising fact. I live and breathe agriculture every day. I have skin in the game with the decisions about agriculture. That makes a huge difference when we have a seat at the table rather than just having a voice in the conversation. We need to address our ag issues. We had over 200 sheds that caved in with snow last year. Yep, our government came in with some support for it. The reason we needed that is farmers found out after the fact the insurance they'd been paying that they thought covered that was an exclusion in insurance policies. We need to fix the insurance, not get another handout. So we do need more agriculture representation, that people that live and breathe that lifestyle rather than people that like to feel they're involved with agriculture.
Thank you. Mike?
Well, growing up here in Red Wing, I was a city kid, got the chance to work on a dairy farm out at Highway 19 in 61. So it gave me a good taste of what it's like to be a farmer. Granted, I'm not full-time like Ralph. Well, what did I do the last 4 years at the Capitol? I got the milk haulers built to help our milk haulers be able to carry the milk from the farms to the creamers without being subjected to overburdensome legislation and regulation by the laws that are in place to fine them after the fact because they're overweight. Beginning Farmer Bill, I championed that legislation and got it through to help our farming community bring new farmers in with new ideas to be building our farm network again. Because if you look at the age of the farmers, roughly about 60 years is the average age of a farmer. We need to get young farmers in there. Ralph talked about the barns going down last year. I was out there with the governor firsthand seeing what was going on. So I championed the legislation that passed with no negative votes against it to add the language to the Rural Finance Authority loan language so that we could get the disaster relief to the farmers and they can get those loans.
Thank
Loan
you.
origination fee, I did that this year. As well as farmer mediation, I extended that to December 1st of this year. Help our farmers through COVID, help them through the harvest, then they can work with
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. This will be our last question before the final closing remarks. So the last question will be to Mike, then Ralph, then Barb, and Matt. So the final question is, what will you do to support our immigrant friends and neighbors in the next legislative session?
I will do everything I can to help our immigrant neighbors and friends. As Barb said earlier, we're a nation of immigrants. I don't look at people by the color of their skin or their ethnicity. What's the character of the individual? How do they treat other people? Do they treat people the way I want to be treated? And that's what I look at. Going forward, I want to make sure that we look at the entire picture to make sure that any legislation that goes through does not disenfranchise any immigrants and it does not do any unintended consequences. One thing with legislation, there's always unintended consequences, so you really have to make sure that you're looking into it, getting all the facts, asking the questions to make sure that you don't hurt anybody unintentionally.
Thank you. Ralph?
Well, I think when it's working with immigrant friends and neighbors, we have to use the golden rule. It's pretty basic. This shouldn't be something that we have to talk about, but we need to make sure that people are not excluded based on race, religion, or sexual orientation. People need to have opportunity and get those opportunities based on performance and achievement rather than some physical characteristic. I think it's government obligation. We represent the majority, but we need to protect the minority. We need to give a voice to those that don't have the wherewithal to stand up to the majority. It's a two-phased approach to government. And that part of it, we need to get our government working together. Part of it is getting the job done in there so we do have jobs out there. We get our bonding so people are put to work. As we improve the economy, we're going to have a lot better results with all people in there. We need to make sure we fix housing. Trying to have affordable housing and a minimum wage so that they have a living wage are some things that we need to get done, and we need our government to come together to do it.
Thank you. Barb?
Well, one of my saddest experiences in the legislature was this past year after the riots in Minneapolis. I visited there, I don't know if it was 3 or 4 times, and spent hours walking the streets and talking to the small business owners whose lives were destroyed in those 4 days. And most of those folks were immigrants who have put their lives on the line, literally, to try to protect their families and grow these businesses, whether it was coffee shops or clothing stores or small restaurants. They lost everything through no fault of their own because government couldn't protect their property and in some cases even their families. We've got to stand up to that failure of government, that failure of leadership. Those folks need a path back. And when people say to me, well, that's Minneapolis, Barb, it didn't happen here. Minneapolis is our economic engine to this state. The tax revenues that are created there, the Fortune 500 companies that are headquartered there, our universities, and a lot of our healthcare system is centered there. We have got to bring back first safety and security to Minneapolis, and then rebuild that economy, and a lot of that is supporting those immigrant businesses who were devastated from those riots. And that's the first thing I would focus on going into next session.
Thank you. Matt?
Yeah, I think it's time for folks like me to amplify the voices that we're hearing from. I totally see you in black and white because I believe that your culture is what makes you. Limiting that vision takes that away from you. It's a richness of your history and it's your perspective. When systemic policies and the people around you are making you feel like you can't breathe, we've got a problem. And so our work needs to be directed at providing equity for all Minnesotans, especially our neighbors here in our community. It's huge that we provide them with equitable education outcomes, an environment that is clean, opportunities, infrastructure. All those things need to be in place so that they're allowed to thrive. If they can't breathe, we don't succeed. And it's time that we ally with our neighbors of color instead of keeping them down or having white people talk over them. It's not our turn right now. We are an ally and we're here to amplify.
Thank you. We move now to our closing comments. You have 60 seconds to say whatever you'd like as a closing comment. And we'll start with Matt, and then Barb, Mike, and then Ralph. So, Matt, your closing remarks.
It has been an absolute pleasure to be here standing in front of you for the last hour. I hope it's been just as enjoyable for you to sit down and listen to us blather about political things. But it has been a real treat to campaign in this fashion, and more than anything, vote. Register to vote, vote by mail, vote early, and do some serious research on those that you're voting for. Your participation in this democracy is everything. Fresh voices in our democracy, bringing a new perspective, are everything. And you hold that power, and we understand how important that power is. Get all of your friends registered to vote. Make sure that they vote. This will be a big one. And every single one is huge. And thank you so much for your participation tonight.
Thank you. Barb?
I'm going to take my mask off because I think it's important to look each other in the face. When I went to St. Paul, I did it because I love this community. I was born and raised here. And I still am there for that reason. I am your voice in St. Paul, whether you vote for me or not. You're all welcome in my office anytime. Call, email me, come up and visit. The way I lead up there is threefold. I listen, I learn, and I lead. There's a lot of listening that needs to happen. We need to listen to each other. I need to listen to you who elect me. I need to listen to my colleagues in St. Paul. I need to listen to the governor. I need to listen to the Senate. And we need to learn. I pull all that information together. I make my decisions based on facts and based on data, not on emotion. We look at the data and we have to make difficult decisions. What have we tried before? What's worked and what hasn't worked? I bring my business experience to the table and I look for what is our return on this investment? How are we going to manage it? How are we going to make sure that this helps the people of Minnesota if this is the decision we're trying to make? And that's leadership. I have the experience to do this job. I've proven to you that I've delivered results and I serve with integrity. And I humbly ask for your vote to do this another 2 years. Thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank you. Mike?
Well, thank you again for coming out tonight, everybody. And as Barb said, we may get elected based on majority, but I represent everybody in the district. Doesn't matter. You come up to the Capitol, it's your office, your seat that I get the pleasure to sit in and represent you. Well, one thing I always do is I always make sure that I talk to people. I ask questions. I go find people to get me the answers. And I come up with common sense solutions that work for everyone. And that's what we need at the Capitol. You need someone who can be level-headed, get the emotion out, work with people across the aisle, and I have done a tremendous job of doing that. And I always want to make sure that whatever I do is in the best interest of everybody for the District 21 and the state of Minnesota. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ralph?
Thank you for your attendance tonight. I would ask for your vote in November. I'm the candidate that has the most in common with you. I'm the only candidate with agriculture experience, a small business owner, My hands are cut up from manual labor. I understand what you live, deal, and work with every day. I've had to buy my own health care, and I bought it for employees. That experience is important when we're making decisions. I've got results behind my name. I've opened up trade with Cuba. I've promoted Minnesota for decades. We've hosted people. My life, my future, just like yours, and my quality of life depends on Minnesota being prosperous and our rural economies having an equitable opportunity and support. I think that experience is very important in how we make decisions and will make a big difference on how hard I fight for your life, which is very similar to mine. I'd appreciate your vote in November. Thank you.
Thank you to all of the candidates. We thank you for your participation tonight. At this time, we'd invite all of you to speak with the candidates in the park. So I think all of them are hanging around for a while. We're going to take a brief break while we set up for the County Commissioner Forum. In the meantime, I'd like to remind you to visit vote411.org or mnvotes.org for more information on voting and on candidates' positions.